I'm going to go over just a few slides to get us oriented to zoom into our coffee hour today. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Holmes, and I am the Coastal Training Program Coordinator for the Delaware National Estuarine Research Reserve, and I am also a steering committee member of RASCL. For just technical assistance today, please note that this is being recorded just so that you're aware. Make sure you can hear us. If you can't hear the speaker, please leave and re-enter. You might need to leave and re-enter the session, or you can also click the arrow next to the audio settings and switch to phone audio if you need to switch to the phone. You are all currently muted, and if necessary, we will unmute you. If you have questions today, please feel free to ask questions. We ask that you submit those questions through the Q&A box. You would click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and enter any comments or questions there. We ask that you save the chat box for any technical support. So if you're having technical issues today, please feel free to send a message in the chat box and we will help you with any technical issues. And for those of you who might be new to RASCL, we are the Delaware Resilient and Sustainable Community League, and we're here to support all Delaware communities in taking the necessary actions to thrive in the face of changing environmental conditions through collaboration, information sharing, and technical assistance. You can see our core values there, or our core issues that we focus on. And today we will be addressing some of those core issues as we are talking about drainage concerns and how to get technical assistance for that, as well as the Coastal Resilience Design Studio and helping with sustainable land use planning and resilient infrastructure. RASCL is a collaborative effort made up of a lot of different partners. We have 21 members at this time, and those various entities you can see on your screen. And we're so excited to have so many people a part of RASCL. Today's coffee hour is going to feature Dr. Jules Bruck from University of Delaware, the Plant and Soil Sciences Department. She's going to be giving us an overview of the Coastal Resilience Design Studio and some of the projects that they've been working on. Additionally, we were going to be hearing from Brittany Haywood, who's a program manager with the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control's Drainage Program. She's going to give us a little bit of an overview of the drainage program and give you some insight into tack stitches. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Jules Bruck. Jules?
Thanks so much, Jen. I appreciate it. I'm going to, let's see, screen and make sure that you can see this okay. So, can everybody see that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Great, thanks so much. Well, thanks, Jen, for that introduction. And I'm just happy to be here today to talk about CRDS. As Jen mentioned, we are a partner of RASCL's, and I'm on the implementation committee for RASCL, and I'm really pleased to be part of that group. So I wanted to talk today about the Coastal Resilience Design Studio, a little bit about what it is and our projects, and give you just a general overview of what we're planning on doing this summer with our student interns. So the Coastal Studio was conceived in April 2018. We brought together a whole bunch of really smart people interested in studying design solutions that are for issues that are affecting Delaware's coastlines. And we kind of did a strategic doing process that led to the formation of the studio. And really we're interested in helping Delaware communities solve coastal problems, but also resilience problems in general. And we're also interested in developing students to become capable professionals. So we work with the communities, and we give them tools and designs and adaptation strategies that help them mitigate disruptions from short-term events and long-term environmental changes. But interestingly, we also talk a lot or helps places focus on bigger like economic concerns and also social concerns, things like safe streets, and those are some of the things I'm going to talk about today. So it's coastal challenges, it's all that, but it's also this economic viability and social safety in coastal towns. So The work is completed in the CRDS. It is a design studio. So we employ undergraduate and graduate students to work with communities. We work in interdisciplinary teams, and students develop, like I said, social and economic resilience strategies, as well as coastal strategies. And that's from my work in the past. I've found that when we come to a community and say, we can design some green infrastructure that's going to help solve either water quality issues or flooding issues. A lot of times community members say, that's great, but we need jobs, or our downtown needs, some revitalization, or we don't feel safe in our community. So we take on all of those challenges. And I think it's a great learning experience for the students. This past year, we employed primarily landscape architecture students, and we had one civil engineer. But this year, we have such a great mix of students. I'm really excited about it. We have 3 landscape architects, several civil engineers, an environmental engineer, an environmental scientist who's going to join us from Tech. And we're working on hiring an environmental policy student from Wilmington University. So it'll be a greater diversity of students. And that was always the vision of CRDS. But it was just during the pandemic, it was easier for me to do outreach to my landscape architecture students instead of being able to find the students cast a wider net. But what we found during the pandemic is that we can work really well remotely by Zoom as a design studio. So we don't have to be in the same place. And that actually allowed me to open the studio up to students from different universities. In fact, we have applications this year from Penn State, Northwestern University, and the University of Wisconsin, in addition to our local Delaware universities. So that's pretty exciting. So you can see that sometimes our students are out in the field doing actual field work, and that's pretty exciting. Our current or recent projects have occurred in Lewis, Little Creek, Dover, the Northeast Wilmington, as well as Fenwick Island and Frederica. I'm going to highlight a few of those projects to share with you some of the things that we have been doing, and particularly in Little Creek at first here. I did want to mention that the studio's process is really iterative. The students get out on multiple site visits. We talk to community members. We hold stakeholder meetings. We look for agency feedback and multi-stage technical and professional reviews. So we have a process that's in place to make sure our students' plans are feasible and viable for the communities. And we do develop multiple ideas and multiple solutions for communities, and ultimately converge on a recommendation to present back to the community for additional feedback. And what you're looking at here is the Little Creek Master Plan that we did for that community last year. And it incorporates a lot of different elements, including green infrastructure and a new downtown redevelopment district in the commercial area, as well as walking trails. It was a very comprehensive project, and I'm going to share a little bit with you. Ultimately, all communities are given 2 different documents. One is about our discovery process. So it's the research that we do to create the drawings and the designs that we end up using. And then there is the resiliency plan that we give them that has all of our design guidelines. So as I said, we've worked together. We've worked now for 2 years at these projects, and we're getting more of a process in place. And we're pretty excited about how we are able to make a difference in different communities, like Little Creek and Lewis. So I'll start with Lewis. This was our very first project. We were working at the DeVries Monument to help enhance the monument, but also create a living shoreline component. And I just wanted to share with you that our students run things, or they used to run things. They haven't done it in a long time because of the pandemic, but this was pre-pandemic. They ran a community visioning workshop and presented to community members. And you can imagine what a great experience this is for these young professionals. All 3 of these young women who are standing at the front of the room presenting are finishing their graduate degrees right now. in either coastal engineering or plant sciences. So I'm really proud of the opportunity that the CRDS gave them to work on their professional skills. This is the plan that that group produced for the monument, and it has a lot of different components. It has a living type shoreline with a lot of room for migration as we face sea level rise issues. So there's two different layers on the shoreline, one that has more aquatic plants and then one that's more of an upland meadow that would be able to migrate up. And it has a boardwalk and a lookout, but it's a very light treatment in through the floodplain area, which is delineated by the blue dotted line. And then a new treatment that's a fully accessible place where people can come and visit the monument. And the students are able to do things like produce these beautiful models. This is actually a video. This is a snapshot from a video that was produced for this project. And the video is quite beautiful and the water is like lapping up against the shore. So the students have this ability to use these design programs that are just quite phenomenal and give the clients a really good sense of what the renovations will look like. So that's been a very successful project and it's still being talked about. There's been progress made on moving toward implementation. But as you all know, many of these things take many, many years to actually implement. So we're waiting on that one to come to full fruition. But we're very excited about the work we've done in the Lewis project. And we do think we could get started on the living shoreline component as soon as some of the COVID restrictions are lifted. So then we worked in Little Creek this past summer. This was more of a comprehensive plan. It was a great project. There's about 200 residents in Little Creek. So it was a perfectly sized project for our studio to be really creative and come up with a lot of different solutions. I already showed you the plan, but this poster gives you an idea of all that we did, including a branding project, our green infrastructure. We developed a new trail with trailheads and envisioned this idea of a bayshore bikeway, which was way out of scope, but the students got excited about the idea of bringing more bike possible miles to Kent County. We did Waterman's Village, which I'll show you in a minute, which is a micro retail concept to bring some economic drivers to the town. And we did street calming project because Little Creek is really interested in slowing people down as they drive on the Bayshore Byway and get through their small town. So we always start with a lot of research and conceptual drawings. You can see some ideas forming here for some of the traffic calming ideas that were coming through. And this is what the town, this is our proposal. This was what the town would look like before, obviously. And then we proposed that this is what it could look like after. So changing the color of the parking lane would narrow the apparent size of the streets, and adding the banners would be really helpful. So we actually had the banners created. If you've driven through Little Creek recently, you might have seen that the banners are flying. And we also have a new grill open in Little Creek. So there's really exciting things happening. And the town, also with the help of the Sustainable Communities Initiative, paid for their own banners and installation. Recently, we did a pop-up. I run a different research project called Living Lab that tests out some of the traffic calming ideas. And we have this up in Little Creek right now, where we're checking to see if some of the design solutions that CRDS students came up with are actually feasible and will slow down traffic. So we're doing traffic counts and trying to determine if people are slowing down as a result of the banners and these bump outs and the different traffic calming devices. So students get this great experience to go outside and really build stuff. And we think that that's a really cool part of the project. So this was the Little Creek installation of the pop-up. With a video that was produced by Ben Muldrow. He's super talented husband of one of our designers. And so he flew a drone and took pictures of that. And What you'll notice is that we were doing that in conjunction with DelDOT, so it was a great student project. As part of the Little Creek project, we developed a micro retail plan. This idea of small footprints of little shops, but large outdoor spaces, which are healthy and also affordable for shop owners, so they don't have a big square footage to maintain. So we designed this little village, and you can see here that this is the existing deli, and then all of these are basically movable sheds that are prefabbed and will be brought onto the site and put in place. And like I said, there'll be big outdoor plaza areas. So there's a plan now to make an ice cream shop right here. This will be farmers market and produce, a bait and tackle, and a kayak launch. And several of the micro retail ideas haven't been quite defined yet. And the idea is like this reinterpretation of a small town seaport. It's a micro retail center building on a coastal history, created to inspire shopping and dining and experiencing Little Creek. So we're hoping that this plan is a nice economic driver that will help bring some vibrancy to the little town of Little Creek. And there's a little image of what the students modeled so that you could see what it would look like. We're really excited about that. And we've actually got the UD Creamery ice cream truck coming down to do a pop-up demonstration of how viable this idea is to bring ice cream to Little Creek, among other things. So the ice cream truck will be there in the next couple weeks on some set days, and they will count the receipts at the end of the day, and that'll give the retailers some better direction to understand whether it is viable to have an ice cream shop in this location, making money. Another project we worked on this winter was the title market at Johnny Cake Landing. This is in the town of Frederica. The idea is that this is where your flavor journey begins. It is actually a farmer's market for the town of Frederica. And that, again, doesn't seem like a coastal challenge. I haven't shown you living shorelines or green infrastructure. We do design all that stuff. But like I said, we get involved with these other projects that are more economic based. And our students enjoy working on those projects too, because that can be the catalyst. And that's what we're hoping the title market is, a catalyst that brings economic vibrancy to this part of town that can then drive investment in green infrastructure. So this project, the idea is that we'll have like this mobile market. It's going to be in a very prominent location, but if it needs to move because a business moves into the place where we want to have it, it can actually move. This is the location of it, and it's currently owned by a developer, and they're thinking about what they're going to be doing with that place. But in the meantime, this is our vision of what the market will look like on Sundays in Frederica to take advantage of the traffic that you get from the Delaware turf. And as you can see, as I flip through these slides, there's different things that we envision as part of the project, planters on wheels and tents with some local branding, just to make it a really great sense of place. And then if that market has to move to a different place to become a catalyst for economic development in a different area of Frederica, it can easily be taken down and put into a truck and moved to a different location. So our upcoming projects, we have several of them. We're planning on working on a design contest that's part of the Coastal Estuary Research Foundation is having a conference in the fall in Hampton, Virginia. And we applied to be designers to their design contest. And we'll be competing against 6 other universities to bring a coastal resiliency plan to the town of Hampton, Virginia. So our students and I are going to take a trip to Hampton and do some research in early June. And then we'll spend the summer developing the same type of plans for resiliency in the town, in the small part of Hampton called Phoebus, which is right near their old military fort. And we're really excited about that because Hampton has unique coastal issues, but they're similar in some ways to what we're facing here in Delaware. So I'm sure from participating in this multi-university design contest, we'll learn a lot of different things that people are doing in different places, and that can be applied back to Delaware. We've contracted with Pickering Beach to work with them on some of their challenges related to their beachfront. And we're excited about that project and brought on an environmental science and an environmental policy student because they have unique habitat for the horseshoe crabs and the red knot. And we're really excited to work with them. And then we're also going to be working on a project in Claymont, Delaware. There's a big project for a new train station a new Amtrak train station going into Claymont. And as part of that project, the developer has lands that they want to turn into walking trails, and it needs to have coastal resiliency addressed in several areas where there could be potential issues. So we're really looking forward to working on that project as well. So that's what I have for today. And I thought I had a slide in here that said, are there any questions? But my slides decided that, there we go. I was pressing the wrong button. So if you have any questions, I'd love to hear.
Great. Thank you so much, Jules. We do have a few questions, and I must say that I've actually experienced your traffic pop up in Little Creek several times. So yeah, it was great because I know there are some issues there. So that was great.
Yeah, what we discovered before we put the pop-up in, what we discovered is from the traffic counts, everybody speeds through Little Creek, and they don't just speed a little, they speed a lot. So we're hoping we can slow them down. Even if we slowed them down a little, it would be a benefit.
Yeah, it definitely did that. I know because I drove through. So our first question is, are there limitations to what you can do with design plans created by students? This person is not sure if there's some kind of licensing required to make them official plans.
Yeah, that's a great question. And well, what we do, like Little Creek has been a great experience because they took our entire plan and they revised their entire town code to match the recommendations in our plan. And there is nothing wrong with that in terms of licensure. However, we did design conceptual level green infrastructure treatments. And we wrote a grant for a surface water matching planning grant, and it was accepted. So that will go to engineering. Duffield is going to be working on that plan with us. So, you know, we have limitations, but that's the same limitation that I would have as a landscape architect. I would have to turn my conceptual designs over to an engineer for verification and feasibility. So the process is really similar, and you know, we stop short of doing anything that would require licensure.
Great, thank you. Our next question is about the visioning workshops. So what tools does the CRDS use during the visioning workshops?
You know, we're really lucky to have as a partner in my project, my co-partner in crime is Ed Lewandowski. And I'm sure many of you on the call know Ed. He is really remarkable with planning and executing community workshops. In fact, he was the one who helped the students in that regard. So the students put together a workshop in that case. We worked on developing plans and allowing people to sort of use stickers and different things to show us what they wanted to see in that site design. They shared some information about different green infrastructure elements, and then the community members were able to express themselves through putting stickers and stuff on their plans. So that was just one idea. We can put our plans up in public and ask people to react to them, like same thing using sticky notes and stuff like that, which we've done in the past. So we have a lot of tools in our toolbox. Really, Ed is the expert in that way. And I lean on him very heavily to come up with really creative workshop ideas.
Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions that we have at this time. If anybody else has any questions and we have time at the end, we will certainly get to those if you have more questions for Jules. Thank you so much for providing that information for us today. That was very informative.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to hand it over to Brittany to tell us a little bit more about the drainage program and our tax ditches here in the state of Delaware. Brittany?
Hey, let me get my screen sharing. All right. Can you all see that? Okay. So as Jen mentioned, I am with Denrex Tax Hitch Program, and we help technical and administrative assistance with tax hitch programs and private drainage. But why? Like, why tax hitches? Why ditches? Well, Delaware, as we all know, is very flat. And in order to get that water off, you have to have a ditch to help move it. So there are tax ditches that help do it. But there's this whole concept of tax ditches, which is very confusing to folks. What is a tax ditch in itself? Are all ditches tax ditches? And the answer is no. So at the heart of it, a tax ditch is a governmental subdivision of the state. It is formed under a legally prescribed process in Superior Court, and it is made up of the landowners that help to form that ditch. So these tax ditches are organizationally based, and how they operate, how they function, what you can do, maintenance responsibilities, all of that action is housed under Title VII, Chapter 41 of the Delaware Code. So these are a legally operating entity. There are 234 of these ditches across the state. That equates to around 2,000 miles of channel. Sussex County has the most, followed by Kent, and then Newcastle with the least. And that encompasses around 100,000 people and over 1/2 of Delaware state maintained highways. So these ditches cover a lot of ground, they move a lot of water, and they're all over the place, really. So they are an organization, and they are formed by watersheds. So these watersheds, though, aren't necessarily the natural watershed. So you have your natural watershed, which is an area to which all waters drain to a specific source. And then you have what is called the tax ditch watershed. That boundary may be a little bit different than the natural one, depending on the folks that agree to form this ditch, the particular areas that are drained by this ditch. So it's a little bit different than a natural watershed. And that's something to keep in mind when looking at ditches as a whole. So you have your tax ditch watershed, and then you have up all the people that make up that entity. And those are called taxables in the eyes of the law. So that's the big picture of, you have your tax ditch organization, which is the boundary of that is determined by a watershed. You have your taxables, which make up the landowners inside of it. And then the actual anatomy of the ditch itself is you have your ditch channel, which is in the center of this. And then you have your right-of-ways. So all tax ditches have a right-of-way. They can be two-sided, one-sided. Their widths vary depending on how wide the ditch bottom is, or whether or not a landowner has filed a court order change, which is a process to reduce the right-of-way. Not all right-of-ways can be reduced, something to keep in mind. So you have your channel, your right-of-way, and then you can also have crossings. So you can have a private crossing over the ditch, or you can have one for the tax ditch. So there are all these different pieces and parts to make up the tax ditch. And that is something to keep in mind when looking at flooding issues, when thinking about like land development, permitting, regulations. All these different facets of tax ditch have an impact on the ditch itself for multiple reasons. But one is maintenance. So right-of-ways are there for maintenance. Not only accessing the ditch, but actually if the ditch needs to be dipped out, so the sediment that's on the bottom needs to be dug, it can be placed right in that right-of-way. The tax ditch doesn't actually own any land. It just has the right to maintain the ditch and access it. But who is actually responsible for maintaining the ditch? That's a question we get. And the answer is the Tack Ditch organization. So each organization is made up of a bunch of officers, 3 to 4 usually. There's one chairman, 1 or 2 ditch managers, and a secretary treasurer. These folks own land within that Tack Ditch organization and are elected officers. These officers are the ones that determine the priority maintenance areas and how to expend the funds the Tack Ditch receives. So they are the ones that are running the ditch, not DNREC, not the conservation districts, the volunteers themselves. These are volunteer folks who are volunteering their time to make this happen. Well, okay, so we have the word Tack Ditch. So where are these taxes coming from, and how are these activities funded? Well, the landowners pay a tax. How much the landowner pays is dependent on the agreement that was created when the ditch was formed. It's a percentage that varies on, like I said, when what was outlined when the ditch was formed, but also their proximity to the ditch, and then a bunch of different other factors come in to play that. That tax is collected by each county on yearly tax bills, and then the county distributes those funds to each of the individual organizations, and the officers can then use those funds for maintenance purposes. The officers are the only folks that can authorize the expenditure of those funds, which comes into issues if there are no officers on a tax ditch, then there's no way to expend those funds, which we get questions about when trying to maintain ditches. The other avenue for funding of ditches comes through cost share or matching programs. So through the state allocates funds to each of the counties through the conservation districts. Those funds are then matched by the county, and they provide supplemental funding for a larger project or issue that needs to be addressed for that tax ditch. And I've mentioned some of the different agencies that assist with the tax ditches and day-to-day operations. So each of the conservation districts in Kent, Newcastle, Sussex, they play a large role. Our office plays a large role, and it's involving the technical and administrative assistance. So what does that mean? Well, for my program, that is related to, as mentioned before, the court order changes, so reducing right-of-ways. So we process the legal paperwork and help the landowners process that to reduce the right-of-ways if it's a feasible request. Our program is also the repository for all the tax ditch system and information. We house engineers that review any changes to the tax ditch, for which then have to go through a court order change process to make it happen. And then, as mentioned, the state funnels money to the conservation districts for funding. We also assist with inspection of tax ditch systems. So responding to concerns and calls related to that, going out there, looking at them, see what's going on, erosion issues, any sort of drainage type concern, we go out and address. And then the conservation districts also help fill that role across the bank, across the board there. So again, the primary responsibility of the tax ditch are the officers themselves. Between our program and the conservation districts, we help them to keep running because they're all volunteer positions. So that's how the tax ditches work, big picture. But where are they actually located? Well, there's 2 ways you can find out. There is this tax ditch mapper, which is at ce.gov/tax ditch map. You can visit this map anytime on any web browser and find the tax ditch channel right away, the watershed boundary, which is the purple lines you see all over the place here, and kind of explore where those are located. So if you're looking at this, like I said, the purple you're seeing here are the watershed boundaries. So that's where these tax ditch systems are located in the state. But a quick tour of this, if you want to search by address, You can search by address here. You can also use this spyglass or magnifying glass to look by parcel number or tax ditch itself. You can use this paintbrush icon tool to draw on it. You can print, you can measure things. You can do all sorts of fun things on this map if you wanted to explore. There's also another option for getting to a map, which is via First Map. So if you want to go and download the shape files yourself, you can do so by going to Delaware First Map and searching tax ditches. And you should be able to find both a feature server and map server for manipulating the data and incorporating that into your own system if you so choose. Just a little bit deeper dive into maps and tax ditch terminology. An ROW is a right-of-way. A COC is called a quarter change, what I've mentioned before. There's COB, which is top of ditch bank, CL, which is center line of ditch or pipe. Both the top of bank and center line are methods for measuring the right-of-way. So in this image here, you see a 75-foot CL, which is a 75-foot center line. So that right-of-way is measured from the center line of the ditch, 75 feet out. If it was top of bank, you go from top of bank, 75 feet out. Because of changes in the regulations, all new tax ditch right-of-ways for open channels are top of bank. They are not center lines. The only center lines are pipe. And then there's another type of right-of-way called SAR, which is a special access right-of-way, and that is purely from just getting from point A to point B to get to the ditch. There's a lot of information when it comes to tax ditches. Basically, what you need to know is if you see a tax ditch, there's maintenance, there's usually a right-of-way, and in that right-of-way, you shouldn't put any obstructions in it, because then the tax ditch itself can't get to it to maintain it. Some other tidbits that may be helpful if you're looking at this map: the blue line is the ditch channel itself. The black arrow down here always points the direction of water flow, the way the water's flowing, and then the orange rectangles are the right-of-ways themselves. And then the way these systems are set up and the labels, the main channel of the ditch is called the main, and then it branches out into prongs. So here you see prong A. You may see prong 1, prong 2, and then if it branches off of a prong, it's called a sub. So it branches and it has naming that goes along with it. So why pay attention, reduce right-of-ways? Why pay attention to this sort of thing? So what you see here is prong 3 in 2002 existed. In 2017, it didn't exist. And our office was not consulted for a quarter change. For one reason or another, not sure. But what now has to happen is, in order to get this prong 3 removed off of all of the landowners' properties in 2017, we have to get every single person to sign and agree to remove it. But the problem comes in, you say, well, what does it matter? Well, if someone in that line wants to get a deck put on or fence put in, they can't, because now there's a tax ditch and a tax ditch right away, and you can't have a fence or a deck or any of that put on new because it's technically an obstruction. So our office is trying to prevent this with land development reviews and everything, but any help we can get, we will take. So that is the tax ditch side of things, how it operates in a nutshell, and the different hierarchy of who's responsible for maintaining and doing what and how we operate. Our program also has a public ditch or private side, also the resource conservation and development projects program. So this side of our program handles more of the private concerns, not the tax ditch concerns, and assists in developing solutions to drainage issues that affect multiple partners. There is a list of different projects that is approved by the legislative community, and they appropriate funds for this to help some of these projects go along. So that side, again, responds to concerns, puts these concerns on the list, tries to move these projects forward in conjunction with the different conservation districts. They also work on some of the smaller drainage projects that are handled by a smaller crew. And with that in mind, we do manage the state's drainage assistance line. There's 3 different options for reporting. And we also have this reporting form on our homepage to assist in collecting information and making that as quick as possible. These concerns are either addressed by our office, again, the conservation districts, or its relevant agency. So if it's a roadside drainage issue, we will often refer it to DELDOT, as they are the ones to hold it. With that, that's kind of program in a nutshell. Myself or Melissa Hubert are the program managers for the Tack Ditch program. On the public side, public-private ditch side is Tyler Brown. If you have questions about that, they can answer, or I can.
Thank you, Brittany. We really appreciate that overview. We do have a question today. Are tack ditches being impacted by sea level rise and climate change? And if so, what adaptation approaches should be considered?
So that is a great question. That is something I have started looking into. And the answer is yes, there are some that will be impacted. But what that means for them is still undetermined, because it's at the lower reaches is where you're going to see that real impact come in. And one of the options we're kind of thinking about proposing is maybe you just don't do maintenance on that end that's being impacted, so that it could, if possible, revert back to its natural state. Because a lot of these tack ditches are or were natural streams at one point. So really what we're focusing on right now is trying to identify the areas that are impacted or will be impacted by sea level rise, and what are some alternatives to that. Historically, the drainage program has been focused on water quantity. Right now, we are trying to figure out how to involve water quality in with water quantity in how a lot of the programs and organizations, tack ditch organizations, operate.
Thank you. One of the questions that I had looking at your diagram, seeing that there was obvious land use changes impacting some of your tack ditches. Are you seeing that that's also, I mean, I would think that land use changes could also impact flooding issues on other people's property if they're not contacting the drainage program. Do you see that happening often with these land use changes?
Well, because of all the rain we're getting, we are getting lots of calls about flooding issues, and land use is an impact. Yes. So one thing to note about tack ditches in particular is that they weren't necessarily designed to handle developed areas. They were initially designed for agricultural areas to maintain water levels at a way where the crops could handle flooding, infrequent flooding. So a lot of these systems are being asked to perform in a way that they weren't designed to perform. And that's another aspect we're planning to look into a little bit more, and have been looking into, as to how to begin to address that, especially in Sussex on the east side, where a lot of development is occurring. Like, what is the expectation of the ditch systems still valid? And how does that impact what we're going through? And that's something we do. So we do land development reviews, and we look at that. And that's something we're trying to bring more attention to engineering and consulting firms of, hey, you're developing and you're depending on this ditch system, but here's what it was designed to handle. I'm not sure if it's meeting your goal here. So yes, we do see land use changing, impacting the number of calls and things, but I think most likely what is happening is the amount of rainfall we're getting is impacting what's going on. And then I think also the switch from people from city areas moving to more rural and not realizing that water can lay sometimes, I think that has an impact too.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I really appreciate your presentation this morning. Jules, we did have a follow-up question for you. And that question is, if a community or a municipality would like some technical assistance from the CRDS, how would they go about engaging in that process?
Yeah, great. So you can just contact me directly and I can walk you through the process. So I'm happy to give my email address, which is jbruck, JBRUCK at udel.edu. So maybe we want to put that in the chat. jbruck at udel. And yeah, and then I can walk you through the process of how we select communities and start our work. And I'd like to hear from folks.
That's great. I think we have quite a few folks on the call today that represent municipalities, and seeing the great work that you all are doing, they might want to engage in that. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for both Brittany and Jules for giving their time today for our coffee chat. I know that we all look forward to a time where we can be in person and have that additional networking that we're so used to. But we thank you so much for joining us virtually today. Just a reminder that we do have coffee hours every so often, and our next one is coming up on July the 14th at 10 a.m. Elizabeth Sawin from Climate Interactive, and the focus is on climate change, inequity, and the pandemic. That information for the registration hasn't come out yet, but please feel free to visit us on the RASCL website so that you keep up with some of the coffee hours that are coming out, and we hope that you can join us then. If you have any other thoughts or want to be participating in RASCL, please feel free to contact us. You can contact myself, and I'll put my email in the chat box, but also Caitlin, Tucker, Danielle Swallow. There's a lot of folks on today that are part of the Sea Level Rise, part of the RASCL steering committee. And we would love to have you participate in more as we are looking to implement our strategic plan, and we do have a lot of committees that are looking to be populated as well. So we thank you so much for being with us today and hope that you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.